Hello there, this is Jan Chappell.
Thanks for joining us, Jan.
Lovely to be here, as it were, in communication with you.
It's great how that we can do that these days, isn't it?
No, it's astonishing. I think it's a miracle. I've been really nervous, thinking my lack of technological equipment is very basic, that somehow it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't get through to you and we'd all be in a mess.
Very good.
You've done brilliantly. Well done.
So to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what made you want to become an actress?
Well, do you know, when I saw that this was probably one of the questions you were likely to ask me, I thought about it, and I remembered the very first time I played a role. And what had happened was I'd suffered some terrible injustice. My parents had done something that made me so angry with them. And at the time, I was terrified of this book, which was about witches, and it was all dark blue and dark green and black lined drawings of these witches, and one was called Mrs. Longtooth, and the only thing on the page that was white was her teeth. And as a sort of 5-6-year-old I must have been, it really frightened me. Well, on this occasion, I remember I went to my room in absolute fury, and I suddenly took it in my head that I was going to go in there and sort of bare my teeth at them and be Mrs. Longtooth in my fury, which is what I did. I think I threw something like a dressing gown around my shoulders and went in and sort of growled and leered at them and then rushed right out. I have no idea what their reaction was, but I didn't stay to see it. But I thought that's actually the first role I played was Mrs. Longtooth being angry. But I guess it's always been a way of expressing how you feel. And quite often growing up, sometimes I was told I was not nervous. No, you do want to do this and you are not nervous. So in the end, I suppose I was told I wasn't feeling what I was feeling. And so suddenly actually meant you could express how you were feeling in a very proper way. And after that, I was good at reading at school, in my infant school. And then I played Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass at my Methodist Church Hall. Then as time went by in my secondary school, I was asked to play the leading parts. You know, at 14, I was playing Viola in Twelfth Night, the Shakespeare play. And then in our school competitions, they'd said, well, Jan, as you're the best actress, you can either direct it or act in it. And actually, I chose to direct. And I think in a later time, I probably would have chosen to be a director rather than an actor, because when things weren't going well in a production, I used to feel it very deeply. I used to think, oh, no, it should be like this or it should be like that. And then I joined the National Youth Theatre, where I met Helen Mirren, Ian McShane, Martin Jarvis. I don't know if these names mean a lot to you. And we had a great fun. I think there was, at the time I joined, we first worked in the admin, there were 5 girls and about 90 boys. And my mother left me in London, age 16, to work for the National Youth Theatre. And she apparently had a terrible time on holiday and couldn't understand why I wouldn't go on holiday with them. And I had to check in with my Auntie Connie each night I got back to South London, having been working in the West End in Soho, popping into the pubs to get the boys a drink, you know, after the show or whatever. And dressing Ian McShane and Simon Ward and Martin Jarvis and coping with all sorts of well, to my mind, relatively innocent harassment, which now would be so frowned on, pats on the bum and whatever. But, you know, we were made of strong stuff, us girls. Anyway, and then I started doing grade examinations being taught grade examinations for Guildhall. And at round about 12, I decided what I really wanted to do. At 11, I desperately wanted to be a vet. That was the one thing I wanted to be, was a vet, until I saw a dog with stitches in its side walking under the bridge in Herne Hill near Brixton. I thought, oh my God, I couldn't possibly be a vet. And after that, I wanted to be an actress. And as I said, it was the Youth Junior Drama League was something I joined, then the Youth Theatre, then amateur drama, and then applied for RADA.
I wanted to pick up on Martin Jarvis, who you mentioned. We do know him very well as Doctor Who fans. He's been in Doctor Who quite a number of times. He first appeared in 1965, I think, was it, Philip?
Yep.
And a couple of times with John Pertwee, and then with Colin Baker as well. So
he was the first one I fell in love with at 16. He was 21. He was my first love. Really?
Was he really?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
speaking of love, how did you first come to meet Stephen Greif?
Well, I met him because he was a couple of terms below me at RADA. I arrived in the autumn of 63, and I think he must have arrived at the beginning or the spring of the following year, something like that. But I didn't know him then so well, except that he went out with the girl whose flat I was sharing. I don't know if you heard this story. Jane Bond, an actress in my group at RADA, was going, I don't know how she connected with Stephen Greif, but I can't imagine. But so we used to see him round in our flat in Shepherd's Bush. And that's how I first met him.
Okay, what was your impression of Stephen at the time?
Well, he was quite a, how shall I say, he had a lot of gravitas, as he has now. So I suppose he was a little, not intimidating, but I didn't know him really. You know what I mean? He was sort of there, very tall, very handsome, with this wonderful voice. So, yeah, a bit intimidating, I guess.
What was studying at RADA like for you?
Well, I was quite an innocent, just turned 18. In fact, I'd applied the year before and I hadn't got there. And of course, I wanted to go to the one place where Martin Jarvis had been. And I saw him in a finals production and I spotted him and John Hurt. I picked out John Hurt was playing the soldier. Martin was playing Domitian, the Roman general or something. And that's why I went to see it, of course. Quite young, and I tried for RADA the year before, and I hadn't got in, and I just went to bed weeping. And it was the same day I had an audition for Central School, and I didn't even get to that audition because I so wanted to go to RADA. And it was like we were encouraged to think we'd joined the profession, joining RADA, really. And it was rather like that. I don't think it was, its ethos wasn't as much as a training as I think it should have been, because if you were good at things, you remained good at things. It was not like the people who were less proficient were encouraged more. They weren't. They were given the lesser parts. You know what I mean? And I didn't, looking back as a teacher, I don't think it was a great training. I mean, not in that sense, but I think their technical training was brilliant. Voice was excellent and movement was excellent. There was some other dubious stuff. We had, we learnt how to smoke cigarettes going, which you wouldn't do now. We'd practice, do this. What? You know, how to use a system technically, which is just
very important skill. Very important skill.
But they were actors coming in from the outside with their own little ideas, I think, which weren't always great. You had to use your intelligence to pick up what you wanted to use and what you were going to reject. That's what I think.
Now we did some research and we believe you won the Jenny Laird Award in drama school for what was. Is that incorrect?
I I did win the Jenny Laird thing, but I had no inkling that it was for a thankless part. It was like there was a top award, and one of the terms there was a top award, the next award, and this was either the fourth or the fifth, Jenny Laird. So it's fourth. There was a group of about 6, 7 prizes, and Jenny Laird was on it. And you must add that the following term I won the top award, the Kendall, which Stephen Greif won as well. So our names are still on the board in Gower Street at the Royal Academy. I'd rather you'd ask me about that than Jenny Laird. I have no idea what that it was for a thankless part. Is the first I ever heard. And the £5, I don't think I ever got. I looked up and it said something about winning a £5 note. You must have looked at that. You found that then.
Yes, I found that. Part of my research.
Extraordinary. I swear I didn't get the £5 note. I think I ought to go back and ask for it.
Yes, I did also see that you'd won the Kendall Award, but I couldn't actually find anywhere. I tried to track down what the Kendall Award was and even who it was named after, and I wasn't able to do that. So that's why I didn't ask about that.
Oh, I see. Well, the Kendall, I've forgotten it was an actor, Kendall. I don't even remember what it was. It was a book. It was a book, and it was the top award for that term. It was like the equivalent, the gold, the silver, and the Kendall were each, because we were termly intakes. It wasn't yearly intakes. We'd taken each term. So you got your top prize for your term. So it was equivalent to the gold medal or the silver, the Kendall. That's why this board reflected that. That's why I love having my name under Ian Holm and Glenda Jackson.
So what did you do between RADA and getting the role of Callie on Blake 7?
Well, I was doing a lot of theatre. I started out at lovely theatre in Guildford, playing with a quite noted actress called Heather Sears at the time. It was a great job to start off with. And then I moved on to the Royal Court, which I'm always very proud to have been part of that as one of our top theatres of new writing. And after that, because we were trained to think, well, it was like there was a progression, an expectation that after that, well, I was lucky. It was like starting quite far up the round, but we were always encouraged, you need to do your apprenticeship in rep. So I then went into rep in Salisbury. I'd been very successful in my finals playing St. Joan and wonderful national reviews and things. And I guessed, obviously, on the back of that, I was asked to play St. Joan again at Salisbury Playhouse. So then I went back into do rep work and worked at various repertory companies. And I think my first television actually did come from a Royal Court job. Which was in a Somerset Maugham play with Maggie Smith and Robert Stevens. I played Maggie Smith's maidservant. And then that started me, because it was always so difficult to get your first telly. And in those days, you had to do so many weeks of theatre before you were given the licence, as it were, to accept a television job.
Okay, so how did the part of Callie come about? How did you first get that?
Oh, well, that was appearing at the Royal Court, because I appeared there several times. That was in a play that, again, David Jackson was in. And David Maloney came to see that. And as a result of that, I didn't know at the time, that was why we were both called in, because he was casting Blake 7.
Did he ask you to come and audition? Did he just ask you to take the role?
We were asked to come in for an interview. I can't actually remember reading it. I must have done. I'm sure we did. And I remember sitting outside a room. I think it was probably the second time I went in. I think I went twice. And that was when I first met Paul Darrow, who was sitting beside me and said to me, rubbed his hands and said, "This would be rather good, wouldn't it?" I said, oh, yes, it would be rather good. But I've forgotten. I wanted to tell you, did you know the story where I first met Michael Keating?
No.
Well, when I was telling you about the early years, when I was doing all the drama I could once I decided I wanted to be an actress, and my parents we earned very little money. We lived in a very lowly part of London, South London, working class area of South London. But Mum and Dad, they were very good. They managed to find the money to pay for remember it was just after the war, and it was all quite hard. Life was hard. We lived in a rented maisonette. They managed to raise the money to pay for trumpet lessons for my brother, and I joined a group on a Saturday morning at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, a class for kids from 12 up to 18, and that's where I first met Michael Keating, because I can remember Michael Keating vividly in grey short flannel trousers. It's extraordinary, isn't it? All that time back, that was when I first met Michael.
Can you just give me a bit more detail about getting the part? You was auditioning with Paul, or outside with Paul. What did they tell you about the role? What were you expecting?
I remember there was a great emphasis on the fact that they thought this would be very popular, and will we be prepared for that? And in those days, there was quite a different attitude towards series, and I'd done sort of posh end, bit of, the theatre, the Royal Court. I'd already done a little bit of RSC. I'd done one-off plays, which everyone wanted to do, new one-off plays. And to accept a series was a bit of a step down. Yeah? Wouldn't be considered that now. And I think it was reflecting the kind of writing with the new plays, the half-hour theatre, the Saturday night theatre. I think it was the quality of the writers really was what it was about. Whereas the series, they thought, it's like the soap opera series. And so, yes, I mean, to be honest, if I hadn't had the pressure of suddenly finding myself wanting to be a mother and having my son, whom I was basically raising alone, I probably would have found it hard to go, oh, should I do a series? It's such a bit, what's this series? But in the circumstances, it was an absolute godsend. I was always looked after by God.
Okay. Child, so you actually had a son, and so part of the reason for working in studio was...
Yes, he was, when I started working, when I was doing the Royal Court job, he was 5 months old, and I used to be able to take him into the theatre with me. And Max Wall, who's a famous comedian of great note in the country, used to sort of make a fuss of him. And John Thor was also in that cast. And they used to entertain him for the 2 hours I went in for rehearsal. And then I used to pick him up, back on the tube, one thing and another, and take him back home. That was the production that David saw. I'd already turned that part down at the court twice. And I said the director kept coming back. So there's no way she'd consider it, because actually I'd been pregnant while I was working upstairs in the theatre upstairs at the Royal Court. And in the end I said, well, yeah, if I can bring him with me. And they said yes. I mean, we're talking 1977. So that was quite revolutionary then, to be agreed to take your child to us. So I was thrilled. So of course I did it. And my dear flatmates upstairs helped babysit in the evenings for me.
So what were you expecting from the role? I mean, it sounds to me like it was a convenient thing for your career, keep your career going, yes, earn money. So it wasn't this is the role you have to play then.
No. It was no. I mean, when I thought about it, I loved the idea, because just like Sally, I mean, we're a bit tomboyish and always were. I climbed trees and thought the greatest thing was to play cowboys and Indians in the woods, with my brother and sister. So it kind of rolled. It did suit. All those things really did suit, and I liked the idea. And it was just a new adventure. We're opening up a new adventure, but it wasn't terribly well paid in terms of the fact I was going to be financing a live-in nanny, which was the only way I could do it. But, it was keeping the career going. I got very tired doing it because, of course, it was great, really, because, when you're doing an episode, some episodes you're busy in, some you're a couple of days or something rehearsal. So I never felt I lost touch with my son's pattern of life. Some days I'd see him all day, and then I go off to work for, an hour in the afternoon or something. So, and it was for 10, how much long was it? Was for about 10, I can't remember, 7-8 months of the year for 3 years running. and then I'd have the rest of the time off. So it was an absolute godsend. And then the money popping through the posts when you just couldn't pay a bill in the later years was just brilliant.
So very much an ensemble cast. What were your first impressions? You knew Stephen Grove, you knew Michael Keating. Did you know anyone else beforehand?
Well,
what was your impression when you met them?
Oh no, because Gareth was at the RADA at the same time as Stephen and I, and he was in my finals production of St. Joan. He played the English soldier in that, so I knew him not very, very closely or well, but yes, I knew him. And I haven't told you do you want to know about the first time I set eyes on Jacqueline Pearce?
Yes, please.
Well, when I was part of the youth theatre, I made a good friend called Judith Smith, who just after, she was a bit older than me, and she got a place at RADA. And so we were in close touch because she lived in South London, as I did. And she would talk about Anthony Hopkins, who was in her class, and Jacqueline Pearce. They were the two people she talked about an awful lot. She obviously really liked Anthony Hopkins and was obviously very impressed by Jacqueline Pearce, and who wouldn't be? And there was the day I went to meet her outside the steps of college, and of course she was then saying, that's Jacqueline Pearce. And I saw the back, this long, glossy black hair down her back, and she was wearing what was very fashionable at the time. It was a grey flannel pleated skirt, so it was quite hip. And then I met her again when I went to a health spa when I was 21. It was after my dad died, and I had a bit of an eating disorder. I was very unhappy with having put some weight on, and I'd made some money doing one of the RSC jobs understudying, and I thought, well, I want to go to this what we called a health farm. It was more of a health farm than a spa, they emphasised very good for rheumatism, things like that. And it was in a nice country house near Hazelmere in Surrey, and there were sort of cabins outside where one stayed, for it was like for 5 days, 6 days. There I met two girls. One was called Caroline Cater, who was also at RADA, and the other was Jacqueline Pearce. And so actually we'd sit drinking our grape juice in the evenings, having a giggle and a chat and things. So that was when I really did get to know her a bit, rather than just hear about this beautiful girl. Yeah.
So when she finally appeared on the show, because there's about episodes 6 or 7 in, had you been expecting her to turn up, or she just turned up and...
Well, I guess we knew earlier, Sean, because we saw cast lists and things. But because of the nature, it's like that at the RSC. You've got the people who play the soldiers, and you've got the kings and queens. In Blake 7, it was us and the crew, and them, the Federation. So in an odd way, that sort of, it gets a bit reflected in the relationships early on, because like Travis and Brian and Stephen and Jacqueline, Brian and Jacqueline were sort of closer than we were, well, some of us anyway, because they were seeing each other so much more frequently. Yeah,
and acting together and building those relationships.
Yeah.
So what about the rest of the cast? What are your other impressions in terms of, Sally or David, Mike, you've mentioned?
I was very fond of dear David. What a lovely, kind, generous man. And very fond of all of us. We had a really good time. And yes, I became a close friend of Jacqueline until she died, these last years. And I am still a very close friend of Sally's. So those relationships have gone down the many years, because we've shared this experience together. And of course, we've gone on meeting up with the conventions we're invited on, and then in these later years doing the audios for Big Finish. So it's always an absolute delight, kept us together, but we become friends anyway. I saw Sally 2 weeks ago, and we'll be in touch again this week, so we keep in touch, close touch.
Did you have any idea when you started this role that 45 years later you'd still be playing the same character?
Just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I feel tremendously lucky to have had it there. And as I say, in those years after Blake Seven, because it was another 18 months after Blake Seven finished, I couldn't get a telly for life or money. And my agent said, oh, they think they know what you do. And again, because, it's a bit naff, people look down on it. I don't know, maybe they didn't like it being popular. The BBC were never really kind at that point to things that were popular. Do you know what I mean? You didn't feel you were treasured in any way. It was all a bit.
So why do you think Blake Seven has endured so long?
No idea. You'll have to tell me. Who are these people that have gone and watching it? I'm not a sci-fi fan, so I don't know. I just think successful series have an ingredient which I think is to do with obviously the writing. It goes through without saying. But that can be very variable and was very variable and continues to be a bit variable. But I think when you've got characters sort of relating to one another and the relationships, you can tell the difference between a close-knit gang who are working on a project when it isn't a team. And I think it was a good team effort, I think.
When we had Sally on recently, she was saying that she was not a fan of science fiction previous to this, but in recent years she has become more of a fan of science fiction. That wasn't the case for you?
No. I think she sees more potential in it for her. And that's true because, you've made your mark. We've made our mark in sci-fi. So, you recognise that as you get older, there's less and less out there for you. So it's really good to exploit that, I think.
You mentioned you've been to conventions, many conventions over the years, and I guess you've probably heard fans speculate about potential romance between Blake and Jenna, and there was also talk of a possible romance between Avon and Callie. Did you think there was ever chemistry between you and Paul to be able to enable that kind of storyline?
I didn't think it was I'd never thought about it. It would have been a different series, wouldn't it?
There's that very big kiss in Sarcophagus.
Sorry, he got to kiss me in Sarcophagus and he got to kiss Jackie too. So Jax as well. So, whatever. That's all in the mind of the viewer. That's fine. Let them make of it what they will. I mean, yeah, it's okay.
Why do you think Terry Nation, when he created such a strong character, warrior woman type character, why do you think he had such trouble writing for her?
I didn't think he did. Why do you say that?
Because I think it's been expressed by other members of the cast as well, and some of his other writing too. But perhaps it was TV of the time, didn't explore those deeper storylines that we get today. Maybe that was...
What do you mean to do? Because of the women's role, you're talking about as women rather than as men.
Yeah.
But I think that's true. It was a reflection of the time. But I've met people who said, it was great to see girls doing that. Emma Peel and then us. I mean, it was a movement forward. And I think we were part of that. And as you know, Sally and I we thought we were I thought I was giving an interview to some Belgian paper. And I said, sometimes Sally and I do get a bit frustrated. It's a bit like we're left on the Liberator to make tea, when really all we want to do is get out of London, get a couple of days filming, whether it was Box Hill, didn't matter, a cave in the UK, whatever. It was just lovely getting out and doing some filming and staying in a nice hotel. So we'd get stuck on the Liberator, think, they're going off filming and we're not. But the girls got left on the Liberator to make tea. And I'll never forget the morning when our producer, Dave Maloney, strode in on the Monday morning and gave us such a dirty look. Because that was an article that had been published in the News of the World with the most horrible pictures of Sally and I. I mean, if they were going to choose pictures, they're the ones where you'd have said, for goodness sake, don't publish those pictures. They look awful. Yeah.
There's a lot of...
Right. We didn't understand either until Sally nor I understood. It would be good if you had a mentor before you did a series like they now have mentors on leaving drama school. I could have done with one then, would have been very helpful, because I didn't recognize that after a couple of episodes, you do have a kind of power, and you could always go to the producer and say, look, next series when they're writing it, maybe one could expand. What about this? And give your own ideas to feed to the writers. We didn't know that. We learned that was possible too late.
Yeah. So it was really a time, a progressive, you're sort of in that progression at that stage.
It was part of, not going to big grumble about it, but I think it was part of a movement forward.
Absolutely. Now, the third series, Series C, there's a lot of material in there for Callie. Now, we're going to ask you something specific. I don't know how you go with specific episodes, but Sarcophagus was an episode that you featured in very heavily. What did you and the rest of the cast think when you read that script? Do you remember anything about that?
Well, I mean, it was a real fantasy one by Tanith Lee, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I loved the idea, because anything that meant I could play a slightly different character, I was hungry for. So even like Children of Aaron, to be able to play something different was great. Yeah, I was thrilled. And I loved doing that. It was kind of a challenge.
I was actually going to ask about Children of Aaron because it's sort of a fan favourite. And it's a part where you got to play two roles because you were getting to play your twin sister Zelda as well. What was it like technically? What was it like emotionally in terms of trying to play the twin roles and make them both work?
Well, I just wanted all I did was sort of look in the box of possibilities and decide I'd make her as different as I could think of to Callie. So that's why she is a bit different. I just sort of different. I can't remember exactly what I did, what I did, what the inner motivation was now. But I know she was different. She looked a little bit, not simple, but a little bit not as active or proactive as Callie.
It sounds like you were having a lovely time. Was it hard when people like Sally and Gareth left and David left?
No, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry they left, of course. Very sorry, because we had, as you probably know, we had contracts that we were tied to for 2 series, and the third was an option, we could pick up or not. And it certainly suited me to continue and do a third. I ran out of steam at the end of that. Unfortunately, I really did run out of steam, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to do my best work if I continued to do a fourth. But yes.
By running out of steam, you were just tired of the whole process?
Ran out of steam, of enthusiasm, of wanting to do it, of enjoying doing it. I mean, you've got to communicate through playing a character in a group. You've got to want to do it. I mean, you've got to enjoy it. Otherwise, it won't be your best work. And I felt I'd run out, and I wanted to do other things, something else by then. Yeah.
How hard did they push you to come back?
Oh, they did. I mean, if I'd realised the fans would have been so upset with me, and having been at conventions and asked questions about it subsequently, I think, God, if I thought people were that upset, I would have done another episode or even 3 just to exit properly. But they were saying, well, would you do 6 episodes? Would you do 3 episodes? Would you do 1 episode? Would you? I said, no. And then it ended up just a voiceover. That was me putting my foot down, which I regret. I think I should have done it differently.
I can honestly say I was one of those people traumatized by Kelly's death. When I was quite young, and when that 4th season started and it ends, starts with you dying, I was just devastated. So
no, I'm sorry.
I've got over it now.
I'm so pleased to hear that. Good.
No, that opening scene still brings a tear to my eye. I'm not sure if you ever watched it either, because poor Darryl plays it really powerfully in terms of saying what's happened. And he talks about the fact that you've died, and his voice is expressionless and just, it's matter of fact. But he does this look away, which just says there's so much emotion there, but he can't possibly express it. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen the scene, but Paul Darrow plays it, and it just breaks my heart every time, which is why we think there's romance there.
Yes.
So
Oh.
having left the show, what obviously it was hard to get typecast as a female hero, which is a bit hard. I believe you did 3 years for the Royal Shakespeare. Was that soon after that?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, that was I don't know what I did after that. I know I was out of work for about 1.5 years. Then I finally got a lovely part as a barrister in something called Crown Court with an actor called Ken Cranham. He was the other barrister. We were I was the defence and he was the prosecution in a upsetting episode about cop death. And I don't know if you've seen this similar program where there are members of the public or the jury, and they actually, you do the drama and the questioning and everything. Miriam Margolyes was a witness as well. And you do it as though it's in court, and then the jury make a decision whether the woman in the dock is guilty or not. Well, Ken Cranham kept coming out of character and making jokes. I decided the best way to win the case was to be really serious. So they absolutely believed I really was a lawyer. And when they came to think about it, they'd go, yeah, I think that. And we did. And I said to the girl I was defending, who was accused of murdering her little baby, we were going to go for a meal if I won, and we won the case. But that was me coming back. And then after that, I didn't work in the theatre, I don't think, for a while after that. I was waiting for tellies, and then I gradually got more and more tellies, Holby City and some of our Lovejoy. And I started working more and more in television again after this sort of hiatus after Blake 7.
Okay, so did you do the Royal Shakespeare Company, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, I did that. I did two. I went there 4 times. I did it before Cali. Then I went there. I was there when I was shared a flat with Louise Jameson in 1973. This was before Cali, 73 to 75. Then 77, I had Sam. 78, I did Cali. And then I didn't work there again until 94. I did at 94, I worked there. 96, I worked there.
Okay, so you and Lou lived together for a while.
She's a great friend. Right. We once got lost in France together. We went shopping in the people carrier. And we both had our little boys, and we were staying with other people. And our first morning there, we said, we'll go do the shopping. We'll go and do the shopping. I had my son was about 5. She had her 2 who were younger. And we said, we'll go shopping for the rest of the 9 people. We got in the people carrier. And I said, have you got your passport? She said, yes. You got yours? I said, yes. You've got some money? Yes, I've got yours. Let's go. Because there's mums, Harris mums. So we took off and we went to do the shop. And we remembered hearing this place called Poubelle or something. That's all we knew. We went off. We went to the near lovely village where they were bowling in the sunshine. It was just glorious. We stacked the back of the people carrier with wine and bread and cheese and food. Then we set off. We didn't know where we lived. We didn't know where we were staying. And we just remembered this word poubelle, which, if you know any French, means the rubbish. It means like the dustbin. So we were going around asking people, où est la poubelle? Well, they thought it probably meant the rubbish dump, someone, big rubbish dump. And, we asked people who were working on the telephone wires, anyone we could see as we motored along. We went back to the town and went on every route out, a different route every time. And we really got lost. And it got to lunchtime. And I said, look, we really ought to make contact. They'll be worrying about us, because they were left with a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and or Harry must have been Sam was about 6, 7. Harry must have been about 5, and Tom about 3 or 2. We'd left these young children with them. All the others were somewhat older, teenagers and stuff. Anyway, Lou was very determined to try and find it herself. And I said, well, maybe you could phone your dad, because we decided her dad would have known where the friends had gone. Anyway, meantime, we stopped off, we had some wine, and we broke into the bread and the cheese. And eventually she did ring. She rang her dad, and we got the address and found our way back like 3 hours late. Of course, they were really cross with us because they thought something ghastly had happened to the two mothers, and they were left with these kids. But no, she's a darling friend, and we had many parallels in our career. The RSC, I met her at. She was understudying me at the RSC initially, and she stepped in when I dried once in Richard II. Bless her heart, she could see. She just picked up the lines and said them, and she could see I'd got transfixed. She was brilliant when she did that. Saved my bacon. And after that, yes, we shared her doing Leela, and then I got Callie, and then we both were single mums, and we both lived in North London. And there was a point at which we were going to buy a big mansion flat together, but I think my son had started school and I'd come out of the Rusks area. She was going to have Tom, and I said, "Look, Lou, I don't think I will." And I also thought, give the dad a chance, sort of thing. Anyway, I always felt guilty about that, but she thanked me about that. She said, "You did so the right thing," because the dad of Tom became a very much part of the family, and dad to Harry as well.
Speaking of Lou Jameson, who was with Doctor Who, and you in Blake 7, you never actually did get to appear in Doctor Who all those years. You haven't even appeared in Doctor Who in Big Finish like some of the other Blake 7 cast. But the closest you did get to Doctor Who was a Doctor Who crossover, or spin-off really, in the 90s called Shakedown, Return of the Sontarans. You had the lead role in that, along with Brian Croucher. What memories do you have of that?
Oh, I really enjoyed it, and I loved Kevin. It's Kevin, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
It was great fun. I enjoyed doing that, and I loved that character. I really liked that character. Could have gone a long way with her. I liked her, and I liked working with Brian because I hadn't really worked with him before, and I'd known him socially because I had a boyfriend when I was 23, Tom Marshall, and he and Brian, they all shared a flat. So I knew him then, and they were all at Lambda. So I kind of knew him sort of socially.
Were you aware at the time of how big a Doctor Who Blake 7 sort of crossover that was with actors from both sides?
Well, there wasn't so much. It sort of increased as time went by. Mind you, my son has done Doctor Who. He's done a couple of Doctor Who's for Big Finish.
What's his name?
Sam Woodward. He did a couple, and John Ainsworth cast him the first one. He did our anniversary one, our 40th anniversary one. He was
The Way Ahead, wasn't it?
Yes, and then afterwards he got cast in another one with, was it Christopher Eccleston in it? I've forgotten. He had much bigger parts. He had 3 different parts. He's very, very versatile.
Philip's going to run us off a list of what he's been in.
I've got Colin Baker's Iron Bright.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've got The Way Ahead. And then he was in the Blake 7 Rebellion Reborn, which isn't Big Finish.
Yes, I was kind of there.
Oh, no, he's been in Iron Bright's definitely a Doctor Who. So, yeah. Speaking of radio plays, the BBC produced a couple of Blake 7 radio plays in the 90s. Were you ever approached for those, or was that always...
I think I was busy.
So how did you end up returning to the role of Callie for Big Finish? Do you remember that process?
Just got a call. There wasn't a process. I just got contacted by David Richardson, and they contacted. And so I thought, well, this will be great fun. And it was so strange the first days in the studio and seeing people I hadn't seen, like I hadn't seen Paul. I hadn't kept up any friendship with Paul or Gareth or Michael. It was Sally I'd seen and Jax. And and yet it felt just like we were in the television studio again, really, because, of course, the group dynamics were exactly the same as I remembered, and people were behaving to type, as it were. And it was lovely. Really lovely.
I guess the the scripts played a lot in that regard as well, because
Yeah.
a lot of attention to detail with regard to the scripts. But there are a couple of different types of scripts, though, a couple of different types of stories for the Rangers, because you've got the chronicle stories, which are more like half audio book with narration and things like that, with only a very small cast. Then you've got your full cast. Which do you prefer to play? Is there much of a difference for you, or you just go with?
Oh, well, I found the ones where there were only a couple of regular characters and you were sort of more reporting quite a lot of what happened. I like to think they worked really well, because they sort of felt doing them. You sort of felt you were doing them with everybody for some bizarre reason. You didn't feel aware of. I thought they were really well written in that respect, and I hope they worked. But of course, one loved doing the full cast ones most of all, and also meeting lots of new people coming in to do stuff was good. Nice meeting the guest stars and guest people who came in.
We recently reviewed a Liberator Chronicles, as those small cast audios were called. And I agree with you 100% that it doesn't feel like there's only one or two people there. It does feel very well fleshed out. And
I'm glad.
Combine those great scripts with your performances. Really, in the one we were doing was called the Armageddon Storm. So there was one episode in particular with just you and Michael Keating, all set on a planet. I think they dropped Michael Keating's voice so he could play an extra character in it as well, some kind of terrorist leader or rebel leader. It was just really, really nicely fleshed out. It was beautiful to listen to. That whole Liberator Chronicles series is just full of gems. Absolutely full of gems.
Lovely to hear that. Really is.
It was actually your first role back, Jan, and you just fell into place perfectly with the others. So yeah, it's a great story, but then it progressed, of course, to a lot more depth after that. So you've done a lot of full cast now as well, and of course there's sort of two different crews. So there's the crew with Sally and Gareth for the first two seasons, and then there's the one with Stephen Pacey, and of course Paul and Michael and you cross over both areas.
Yeah. I just know it's lovely when we have a change and Stephen's there and Yasmin's brilliant. She's lovely. Because she has something about her that reminds me of Josette, something to do with her intonation or her inflection. Somehow the way she does it, and she's such a darling girl. She's lovely to have around, I must say. But in terms of the scripts, that's quite different. I just know sometimes you just go, wow, this is a really good script, and sometimes they're fine. But you know what I mean. Some scripts are better than others, but I'm not knocking it anyway.
Big Finish has started recasting some roles from the Doctor Who show because naturally a number of actors have now passed. They're being a bit more creative in terms of what they're now doing with your characters. Would you be interested or not in terms of having recast of Blake 7 members, or are you much happier with what they're doing in terms of the new story?
I like what they're doing now, because I think now they've got the confidence that people will still be interested and want to buy them, and it's got a commercial side to it, because we have to remember that is obviously a big consideration. I think now, after all this time, it seems to me it's right, and especially it's not like people decided they didn't want to do it anymore. They did actually die. I just think it's the right thing to move it on, and of course we've all got limited lives. So at least presumably they'll have created something different to move forward with. So I think it's absolutely the right decision, and refreshing and good.
Have you been enjoying the new stuff they've been giving you, like in the Clone Masters? Are you enjoying that sort of work?
I loved Laura. I loved again playing two characters, really. So I enjoyed doing that a lot. Yeah.
How did you record that? Did you go into studio for that, or with lockdown were you recording?
I went into the studio for that. Yes, I did, because everyone else has got home studios or were getting them. And because I'm kind of have a different lifestyle now, really, I do things. If people offer me things, I will think about it and do it. But I mean, they're not really, except for Big Finish. And I've moved on. I had a very solid career in teaching, and I had to as a single mum. I couldn't afford to be out of work anytime. So I created and continued to build a strong teaching career. I also had a little business interest and rental property. And I decided a little while back now that I was going to not always put this business first. And I ran an agency too for my students, entertainment agency. And I started that back in 2008, which I don't do now. It doesn't function now really. But I wanted to be free to go on the holiday, free to go to the party, free to go to the funeral, free to go to the wedding, and everything throughout your career. You're always putting everything else behind getting that job, and I am free of that, and I don't have that compulsion that does make people stick with the business. The sense of somehow this sort of discontent, unhappiness if you haven't got a job or nobody's offering you a job as an actor. It's like a disease. And it's terrific to be free of it. I mean, I feel I grew up somewhere alongside becoming an inspector of drama schools. And I think lots of things changed me on my route to doing other things. And I feel quite valuable doing other things now. I think one just doesn't feel quite valuable enough, which is what keeps people sort of urgently, even when you're really quite old, where's the next job? And of course, it's tragic, really, because, of course, once you hit even your late 50s, 60s, as reflects real life out there, the actual proactive, fascinating jobs diminish. And I know a lot of actors who are older who are very frustrated now.
So with all that in mind, what's next? What's your next chapter for the next Jan Chappell chapter?
I understand there are some scripts being written for further Big Finish, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that. Because I do love doing them. And of course, it's lovely keeping your foot in the warm bath of, Big Finish and doing the audios and seeing the chums on other actors. It's lovely. It's really lovely. And you always have a good time.
You seem to regain your voice immediately. Both the Callie voice is just still there in terms of, it doesn't sound like it's aged at all.
Doesn't it? Oh, I'm bad.
No, it sounds great. And also you just drop into character. Is it just that you've been playing the character for so long? Or is all your acting experiences just come straight back whenever you just hold the script in your hand?
Yes, it does. It just comes back. Callie just comes back, and it's the same. One still has the same instinct after whatever it was, 33 episodes. You still have this instinct that goes, John Ainsworth, excuse me. She says, Callie would. It's just weird. She says that because it's not very Callie. If something pops out, it just doesn't seem right. So yeah, and so you get it corrected. So you're still like you were even when we were doing the TV. Sometimes when you got to know the characters, something would pop out that you wanted to sort of script edit.
We're looking forward to many, many more adventures from Callie and the world's a Big Finish. And Jan Chappell, really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, I do hope it's been all right and isn't boring.
For crazy fans like us, we don't get bored.
I think there are some things that I haven't talked about. I mean, there are things during this that we haven't discussed. I mean, that I haven't talked about before, because often you're repeating yourself, but I have told you. Haven't told anyone before.